When my marriage fell apart, I didn't want support. I wanted nobody to know. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I wasn't looking for people to rally around me. I was trying to hide. I didn't want to tell people what was happening in my life. I didn't want the questions. I didn't want the looks. I didn't want the sympathy. Mostly, I just wanted my family back. But heartbreak has a way of exposing what we can't carry alone. And what I learned during one of the hardest seasons of my life is that support doesn't always look the way you think it will. Sometimes the people you expect to show up don't. Sometimes the people who do show up change your life forever. And sometimes the people who carry you aren't the people who fix it. They're the people who stay. Hey there, and welcome to Momma Drama and Trauma. I'm Jenny, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is called Who Carries You When You Can't Carry Yourself? At first, I thought this episode was going to be about friendship after heartbreak, but as I started reflecting on it, I realized that's not really what this episode is about. This episode is about support. It's about the people who showed up, the people who answered the phone, the people who sat with me when I didn't know what to do next, the people who listened while I cried and repeated myself over and over again, the people who reminded me that I was going to survive something I wasn't sure I could survive. When I look back now, almost 3 years later, I don't remember every conversation. I don't remember every piece of advice. I don't remember every detail. What I remember is who stayed. And I think that's what I want to talk about today. Because when life falls apart, you learn a lot about people. You learn who shows up. You learn who doesn't. You learn who can sit with pain. You learn who becomes uncomfortable and disappears. You learn who answers the phone every single time. And maybe most importantly, you learn that sometimes support doesn't come from where you expect it to. The day everything changed. When I found out about the affair, I didn't immediately start calling friends and family. Actually, I did the opposite. I wanted nobody to know. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt overwhelmed. I was in shock. And if you've ever been through something that completely blindsided you, then maybe you understand that feeling. It's almost like your brain can't catch up to what's happening. You're hearing the words, you're seeing what's happening, but part of you still doesn't believe it's real. That's where I was. The very first person I told was my sister. She's my big sister, my protector. I remember feeling completely overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, not knowing what came next, not knowing how to process what had just happened. And later that same day, after I'd had a little bit of time to process it myself, I told my mom. For a while, those were really the only people I told. Everybody else found out from somebody else. Some people heard it from my husband. Some people heard it from family. I wasn't running around telling my story. I was trying to survive it. And if I'm being honest, part of me was still hoping we would figure it out. Part of me still believed we'd save our marriage. Part of me still believed we'd find a way through it. So while other people were already seeing the reality of what was happening, I was still trying to understand it myself. I wasn't thinking about divorce. I wasn't thinking about protecting myself. I wasn't thinking about legal paperwork or finances or any of those things. I just wanted my family back. That's all I could see. I think that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for the people who stepped in during those early weeks, because they could see things that I couldn't see, not because they knew better than me, not because they were trying to tell me what to do, but because I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was trying to survive minute by minute. My mom became my safe place. And if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know my mom has always been that person for me. She didn't tell me what I should do. She didn't badmouth my husband. She didn't tell me to move on. She didn't tell me to get over it. She just listened over and over and over again. I can still hear her saying, I wish I could take this pain away from you. If I could carry it for you, I would. And honestly, that's what love looks like. Not having the answers, not fixing it, just wishing you could take someone's pain away because you love them so much. My sister was different. She loves me just as fiercely, but she has always been my protector. She was angry when I couldn't be angry. She was strong when I wasn't strong. She saw things differently than I did because she wasn't standing in the middle of the storm. And even today, she's still protective of me. She's still my big sister. She's still the person who wants to make sure nobody hurts me. Looking back now, I realize I needed both of them. I needed my mom's softness, and I needed my sister's strength. I just didn't know it yet. The people who showed up. During those first few weeks, I wasn't thinking clearly at all. I was just trying to make it through the day. I got up, took care of my boys, handled whatever needed to be handled, and then tried to make it through the next day. Everything felt like survival mode. I wasn't looking months down the road. Honestly, I wasn't even looking a week down the road. I wasn't thinking about protecting myself or what life might look like if my marriage didn't survive. At that point, I still believed we were going to figure things out. I still believed we were going to find a way to put our family back together. So while other people were helping me think about what might come next, I was still trying to process what had already happened. I was still hoping my family would somehow find its way back together. That's why looking back now, I'm so thankful for the people who stepped in and helped me see things I couldn't see yet. My sister-in-laws became a huge source of support for me, and I think part of what made that support so meaningful was that they knew our family. These weren't people hearing pieces of a story. These were women who had been part of our family for years. They understood the family dynamics. They knew me, they knew my husband, they knew our kids, they knew the history. One of my sister-in-laws started encouraging me to think about things I wasn't even remotely considering. I remember her bringing up divorce, and honestly, I couldn't even comprehend that conversation at the time. Not because she was telling me to get divorced. She wasn't. She was trying to help me understand that I needed to protect myself and my kids. At the time, I couldn't see that. I was still thinking about saving my marriage. I wasn't thinking about protecting myself. I was thinking about getting my family back. But she could see that I needed to start preparing for possibilities I wasn't ready to face yet. She's also the one who encouraged me to find a counselor. About 2 weeks after everything happened, she told me I needed somebody to talk to. Someone outside of the situation, someone who didn't know anybody involved, someone who could help me process what I was going through. And honestly, that advice changed my life. That's how I found Dr. Denise. When I look back now, I don't know where I would have been without counseling. Because there are some things you can tell your family, there are some things you can tell your friends, but there are also things that need a safe place, a neutral place, a place where you can be completely honest without worrying about how it affects anyone else. Dr. Denise became that place for me. She helped me untangle thoughts that felt impossible to untangle. She gave me somewhere to bring all the fear, all the confusion, all the heartbreak, and for that, I'll always be grateful. My other sister-in-law helped me in a completely different way. She listened every time I called, she answered. If she couldn't answer right away, she'd call me back. And if you've ever been through something devastating, you know how much that matters, especially when you're repeating yourself. Because let's be honest, when we're hurting, we repeat ourselves. We tell the same stories, we ask the same questions, we replay the same conversations. We're trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. And she never made me feel like I was too much. She never made me feel like I'd already told her that story. She never made me feel like I was a burden. She just listened. And there was another piece of that support that meant more to me than I realized at the time. They were my family too. Yes, technically, they were my husband's family, but they were my family too. We'd spent so much life together. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together. We watched our kids grow up together. We went on camping trips that felt like little family vacations and spent spring breaks making memories together. These weren't just people I saw a few times a year. These were people who had been part of my life for more than 2 decades. I love these people. And in those early weeks, I think part of me needed reassurance that I wasn't losing all of them too. That they weren't just going to disappear from my life. That they still cared about me. That they still cared about my boys. That the relationships we'd built over decades mattered. And they showed me they did. That meant more than I can probably ever explain. A few weeks later, my cousin called to check on me. She told me about Dr. Christie and how much she'd helped her. At that point, I was willing to try anything that might help me survive what I was feeling. So I reached out, and that introduction ended up becoming another turning point in my healing. Because Dr. Christie helped me understand something I didn't know at the time. My heartbreak wasn't just emotional, it was living in my body too. The anxiety, the fear, the stress, the constant feeling that I couldn't relax. The feeling that my nervous system was always on high alert. For the first time, I started understanding that trauma doesn't just affect your thoughts. It affects your whole body. And that understanding became an important part of my healing journey. Looking back now, I can see that every one of these people carried a different piece of the weight. Nobody carried all of it. Nobody could, but each person helped carry something. And together, they helped me survive a season I honestly wasn't sure I could survive. The night I stopped carrying the shame. One of the hardest parts of those first few months wasn't just the heartbreak. It was the shame. And what's interesting about that now is when I look back, the shame didn't even belong to me. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was embarrassed. I didn't want people to know. I didn't know who had heard what. I didn't know who my husband had talked to. I didn't know what people were thinking. And because of that, I found myself wanting to hide. Not forever, but for a while. I pulled back from people. I pull back from events. I pull back from friendships. The truth is, I'd actually started doing that even before the affair. Toward the last few years of my marriage, I wasn't really showing up as myself anymore. I wasn't feeling very good about myself. I wasn't putting myself out there. I was becoming more withdrawn, more isolated, less like the Jenny I'd always been. Then December rolled around. A few months had passed since the affair, and my friend Christy was hosting her annual cookie exchange party. Christy and I met about 11 years ago after I moved into the neighborhood. She started out as a neighbor, but over the years, she became a great friend. And every year, she hosts a cookie exchange party that I hadn't gone to in a couple years. Partly because life was busy, partly because I'd started pulling away from people, and honestly, part of me didn't want to go this year either. I felt awkward. I felt exposed. I didn't know who knew. I didn't know who didn't. I didn't know who my husband had talked to. I didn't know what people had heard. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't know if I wanted to walk into a room where people might know what had happened to my marriage. But something in me decided to go. Looking back now, I'm really glad I did. I remember feeling nervous when I walked in. I remember feeling uncomfortable. I remember feeling like everyone probably knew. And eventually, throughout the evening, I started talking. I started sharing pieces of my story. Not all at once, just little pieces. And something happened that I wasn't expecting. Nobody judged me. Nobody blamed me. Nobody made me feel like I should be embarrassed. Nobody made me feel like I had done something wrong. Instead, they listened, they hugged me, they comforted me, they supported me. And for the first time, I started realizing something important. This wasn't my shame to carry. I didn't have the affair. I didn't make those choices. Was I perfect? Of course not. Nobody is. But the shame I'd been carrying around for months wasn't mine. And I think that night was one of the first times I truly started letting go of it. Not all at once, not completely, but enough to breathe a little easier, enough to stop hiding quite so much, enough to start realizing that people weren't looking at me the way I feared they were. They weren't judging me. They were loving me. That's one of the greatest gifts people can give someone who's hurting. Not advice, not solutions, just compassion. Because compassion has a way of helping people find their footing again. And that's exactly what happened for me. That night didn't heal everything, but it helped me take one more step toward finding myself again. People who surprised me. One of the things nobody really tells you about heartbreak is that it changes the way you see relationships. Not just romantic relationships, all relationships. Friendships, family relationships, acquaintances, coworkers, neighbors. You start paying attention to who checks on you, who reaches out, who remembers important dates, who sits with you when things are uncomfortable, and sometimes what you discover surprises you. There were people I expected to hear from that I didn't. People I thought would check in more often than they did. People I thought my boys and I would have support from who weren't really there. And honestly, I don't know why. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they felt uncomfortable. Maybe they felt caught in the middle. Maybe they were dealing with things in their own lives. The truth is, I don't know. And over time, I've learned that not everybody has the capacity to show up in difficult situations. Some people want to help, but don't know how. Some people are afraid they'll say the wrong thing. Some people disappear because pain makes them uncomfortable. I don't think most people do it to be hurtful, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when it happens. At the same time, there were people who surprised me in the best possible ways. One of those people was my friend Michelle. Michelle and I have been friends since we were 14 years old. Life had gotten busy over the years: kids, sports, schedules, marriage, work. The normal things that happen when you're raising families. We still loved each other, but we weren't seeing each other all the time. Then one day, she happened to run into my husband at a restaurant. That's how she found out. Not from me, not from a phone call, not from a conversation. And when she learned what had happened, she reached out. But what stands out to me isn't just that she reached out. It's that she kept reaching out. She started inviting me places, lunches, dinners, events, Valentine's Day, simple opportunities to get out of the house and be around people. I remember one of the first times I went out with her was the day after what would have been my 22nd wedding anniversary. And if you've been through divorce or heartbreak, you know how heavy those dates can feel. Even when you know the relationship is over, even when you know life is moving forward, those dates still carry weight. Part of me felt like I should have been spending that weekend with my husband. Part of me was grieving what should have been. But Michelle gave me something else to focus on. A reason to leave the house, a reason to laugh, a reason to remember there was still life happening around me. I didn't always want to go. Sometimes I had to push myself. Sometimes she pushed me, and looking back now, I'm grateful she did. Because healing isn't just crying and processing. Sometimes healing is putting on your shoes and going to lunch when you'd rather stay home. Sometimes healing is saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. Sometimes healing is letting people love you when you're not sure how to love yourself. And Michelle did that for me. She kept showing up. She kept inviting. She kept reminding me there was still life beyond my heartbreak. And Michelle wasn't the only one. There were other people who reached out too. Friends, neighbors, people who heard what happened through the grapevine and simply wanted to make sure I was okay. Some invited me to lunch, some invited me to dinner, some checked in with a text message, some shared books that had helped them through difficult seasons. Some just wanted me to know they were thinking about me. Looking back now, I realize how many people were quietly showing up for me. Not all in the same way, not all at the same level, but each one offering a little bit of support during a time when I needed it. And that's another thing I learned. Support doesn't always come from one person. Sometimes it comes from a whole collection of people, each carrying a small piece of the weight. One friend takes you to lunch, another listens on the phone, another checks in with a text, another shares a resource that helped them, another simply reminds you that you're not alone. And when all of those small acts of kindness come together, they become something much bigger than any one person could provide by themselves. And then there was another friendship that completely surprised me. If you would have told me years ago that this person would become one of my sources of support, I would have thought you were crazy. A couple weeks after the affair, I reached out to the husband of the woman my husband was having an affair with. Even saying that still sounds strange. At first, I wasn't even sure if I should contact him. I sent a Facebook message, then I deleted it, then I sent another one. I went back and forth because I didn't know if it was the right thing to do. Eventually, one of us called the other, and what I found was something I didn't expect: understanding. For the first time, I was talking to someone who knew exactly what this felt like. I didn't have to explain the confusion. I didn't have to explain the heartbreak. I didn't have to explain the endless questions. He was living it too. new. We were both trying to understand how our lives had changed so quickly. We were both trying to understand how our children were being affected. We were both trying to figure out how to move forward through something neither of us had chosen. Over time, we talked less about the affair and more about our kids, how they were doing, how they were coping, how we could help them through everything that had happened. And while we don't talk nearly as often now, we still check in from time to time. I ask about his child, he asks about my boys, and what I've realized is that friendship can show up in the most unexpected places. I never would have imagined becoming friends with him, but that's exactly what happened. Not because of the circumstances, not because of what connected us, but because we understood each other. We knew what the other person was carrying. And sometimes that's enough to build a friendship. Looking back now, one of the biggest lessons I learned is this. Some of the people I thought would be there weren't. And some of the people who loved me more than I ever imagined. Heartbreak didn't just show me who was missing. It showed me who stayed. And that might be one of the greatest gifts hidden inside one of the hardest seasons of my life. What this taught me about love, support, and healing. When I first started thinking about this episode, I thought it was going to be about friendship. But somewhere along the way, I realized it's really about something bigger. It's about support. It's about what happens when your life falls apart and you realize you can't carry all of it by yourself. For a long time, I thought strength meant handling things on my own, holding it together, taking care of everybody else, pushing through, figuring it out, and to some extent, that's what I did. I still had 3 boys depending on me. I still had responsibilities. I still had a life to keep moving forward. But what I learned during that season is that strength isn't refusing help. Sometimes strength is answering the phone when somebody calls to check on you. Sometimes strength is saying yes when a friend invites you to lunch. Sometimes strength is sitting in a counselor's office and admitting that you're struggling. Sometimes strength is crying in front of somebody and letting them see that you're hurting. I didn't know that before. Or maybe I knew it for other people. I just didn't know it for myself. I also learned that support isn't about having the perfect words. Looking back, I honestly don't remember most of the advice people gave me. I don't remember every conversation. I don't remember every detail. What I remember is who showed up. I remember who answered. I remember who listened. I remember who checked on me. I remember who kept inviting me out even when I wasn't much fun to be around. I remember who sat with me while I repeated the same stories and asked the same questions over and over again. That's what I remember. And I think that's because when people are hurting, they don't necessarily need answers. They need connection. They need to know they're not carrying it alone. I also learned that healing doesn't require shame. For months, I carried shame that didn't belong to me. I was embarrassed. I worried about who knew. I worried about what people thought. I worried about how my life looked from the outside. And eventually I realized something. The affair wasn't my shame to carry. The divorce wasn't my shame to carry. The heartbreak wasn't my shame to carry. It was my reality. It was something I had to walk through. It was something I had to feel. It was something I had to heal from. But it wasn't something I needed to be ashamed of. That realization changed a lot for me because once I stopped carrying the shame, I could focus on carrying myself. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons I want to leave you with today. If you're walking through something difficult right now, pay attention to the people who stay. Not the loudest people, not the people with all the answers, the people who stay. The people who answer the phone, the people who check in, the people who keep showing up, the people who make space for your pain without trying to rush you through it. Those people are gifts. And if you're lucky enough to have people like that in your life, tell them. Tell them you appreciate them. Tell them they mattered. Tell them they helped carry you. Because looking back now, I can honestly say I wouldn't have made it through those first months the way I did without the people who stayed. My mom, my sister, my sister-in-laws, Dr. Denise, Dr. Christy, friends who checked in, friends who invited me out, unexpected friendships that came from unexpected places. Every single one of them carried a piece of the weight. And because they did, eventually I learned how to carry myself again. That doesn't mean the pain disappeared. It doesn't mean healing happened overnight. It just means that little by little, day by day, I got stronger. And that's really what healing looks like. Not waking up one day completely healed. Just continuing to put one foot in front of the other until eventually you realize you're standing on your own again. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a couple questions. Who carried you when you couldn't carry yourself? Who answered the phone? Who checked on you? Who stayed when life got messy and uncomfortable? And maybe just as important, have you told them? Have you told them how much it meant? Have you told them that they helped you make it through one of the hardest seasons of your life? Because sometimes people don't realize the impact they've had. Sometimes they don't know that a simple phone call mattered, that an invitation to lunch mattered, that listening mattered, that showing up mattered. But it does. It matters more than we think. And if you're in the middle of something hard right now, I want you to remember something. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to be strong every minute of every day. Let people love you. Let people support you. Let people help carry the weight when it feels too heavy. That's not weakness. It's part of being human. Before I let you go today, I'd love to hear from you. Who carried you when you couldn't carry yourself? Was it a friend, a family member, a counselor, a neighbor, maybe someone completely unexpected? If this episode brought someone to mind, send them a text, give them a call, tell them thank you. Sometimes people don't realize how much they helped us until we tell them. And if you'd like to share your story with me, I'd love to hear it. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Momma Drama and Trauma. Because one thing I've learned is that none of us were meant to carry life's hardest moments alone. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And thank you to every person who helped carry me when I couldn't carry myself. I wouldn't be who I am today without you. As always, you are strong, you are worthy, and your story matters. Until next time, take care of you.